Please go ahead. We are recording, Andy. Please go ahead.
So you want to start now? I'm a little confused.
Yes. Go ahead. Start. I just turned my mic off, right? So
okay.
Everything is ready. All good. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me today, Tanya. So my name is Andy, Andy Martin, and I'd like to have maybe 10 or 11 minutes of your time just to walk through some basic concepts around blockchain. But before I do that, just a few words about myself. Now, I have to admit that my son there has just literally this week gone to university, so you can age me there quite easily and see what working for IBM for the last 18 years has done to me. But I live in the UK, and I was lucky enough to join IBM when we formed our blockchain platform unit, and I led our team trying to work out how to build business cases and business models for blockchain networks. So I've spent the last 4 years doing that. And I reckon I've touched probably about 100 networks, most of them just for a few hours, but a few of them, maybe about 20 for extended periods. And what I want to do in the next 10 or 11 minutes is just share with you, some of the things that I've learned and some of the things which I think might be helpful for you when we start thinking about blockchain. Okay, so your first question then is, well, where should I start? What should I think of blockchain? Well, it's not a bad place, to go back to 1995 and start there, which is when the World Wide Web was implemented. So this was the first implementation of the internet. And this gave us an internet of information, an information superhighway. Now dial forward to 2008, 2009, and we have a re-implementation of the internet, Web 3.0, to give us a transaction superhighway. So as Ginny Rometty, one of the old CEOs for IBM said, blockchain will do for transactions what the World Wide Web did for information on the internet. So the problem that we're now fixing with this transaction superhighway is, how can I trade value from peer to peer without the need for anyone in the middle to make sure that the value is transferred and to make sure that there is no double spend. So this is transformative for marketplaces because we have decentralized marketplaces. Now, if we're going to build this transaction superhighway, what are the components that we're going to need? Well, first of all, we're going to need certainty of identity. So who am I dealing with? Be this permissionless, perhaps based around reputation, or be this identified via know your customer and anti-money laundering. The second thing I'm going to need to know is certainty of provenance. What am I buying? Again, very useful if this were a bag of cobalt or a part on an aircraft engine. And finally, I'm going to need certainty of execution. If I do this, then I will get paid. If we put these three components together, we now have the basis to build a marketplace, secure in the knowledge of who am I dealing with, what am I buying, and the ability to transfer value and ownership at the same time. I can make these marketplaces very liquid if I move and tokenize the asset. This will give me far more flexibility in how I can trade and how I can settle in a digital native payment. So I can drive microtransactions and drive new types of business models and new types of secondary markets. But perhaps the thing that is most important is the last box, which is the incentive. Because the way that we create this transaction superhighway without a middleman is by having all the participants in the market agree and reach consensus over what the transactions are. And in order to do that, they need to have an incentive to collaborate. And designing that economic model and designing those incentives is fundamental. Now, if we look at the problem that we've fixed, we have created a distributed, shared source of the truth where everyone can go to see what's going on without the need for a new, powerful central intermediary. Now, that's the critical bit. There's nobody in the middle that is creating this shared, distributed view of the truth. The community has created it. And that's really important because it means that the power of the marketplace has been decentralized across the members. We don't have one big, new, powerful central intermediary. Now, if we start thinking about, well, why would members be interested in this new type of marketplace? Well, okay. First of all, our blockchain is a platform. And like any platform, its success lives or dies by network effects. That means how many transactions do I have going through my marketplace, which is a function of how many people I have recruited onto the network. So it's critical to go out, recruit the folks, and get those transactions going through your network. Secondly, it's a function of decentralization. And we may start, particularly in the enterprise world, quite centralized actually, where we're a little bit better than a central database, but we're gradually becoming more decentralized. And the first problem we're going to fix is what I would call ecosystem reconciliation. So this is where we have digitized paper flows, business to business, and with that common view of the truth, all of that reconciliation work falls away. So a process like post-trade settlement, invoice and payment reconciliation, because that data is now agreed by the community in one place, it's like an ERP for the internet. You get tremendous optimization of the as-is process. The next thing that we can do is to start to open up and create more of a marketplace, because the data that we have created can be considered to be a new class of data. This is trusted data at the level of the market. Now, this data didn't exist before because the only way you could get it would be with a central intermediary, and folks often don't want to share their data. It's confidential. They don't want to share it with somebody else. There's no trusted player. With this new trusted data at the level of the market, you can innovate and create new businesses and new value propositions and drive new revenue in your open marketplace. And then finally, as we use that tokenization, this gives us greater liquidity as we can start to build innovative new types of business models, and we can start to drive secondary markets, new types of secondary markets, and we can try and start to drive new types of trading models. So what might that marketplace look like? Well, we're going to have to, first of all, decide who are the folks that we need to be recruiting into our marketplace. So we might need the mine, the smelter, the bank, the insurance provider, the trading house. Who are the folks that we need? And then the use cases or the applications that we can support will be a function of who we have in the room. So maybe we start with a post-trade use case, invoice and payments. So I need all the folks in green, so I can support that use case. But if I then add logistics and transport, and I then add ports and warehouses, I can then expand out into more of a provenance and a logistics use case. So with each extra dot that I add into the marketplace, each type of company, they bring a different type of data, and therefore I can support more and more applications as I build out an app store. And we're basically building out an app store for the industry. Because we are re-implementing the internet, you don't want too many of these marketplaces. So for mining, you may want to have maybe one per region, one for certain types of the market. But this is the internet of transactions. You don't want too many of these networks because the value is in who is in the room, and therefore what network effects you can get, volume of transactions, and what use cases you can support. Now, one thing that we need to recognize is that the blockchain world is starting as two separate worlds. We have the public permissionless world of Bitcoin and Ethereum, and we have the enterprise private permissioned world of Corda, Fabric, or Quorum. Now, the problem that Bitcoin and Ethereum are trying to solve is censorship resistance. How can I create a network which no external party can take down? Therefore, the ownership in that asset cannot be challenged by anybody, be that my Bitcoin, or be it the deeds to my house, or be it an asset moving up and down the supply chain. But as we move that pattern into enterprise for business, the problem that we're now trying to solve is, how do I create a shared, distributed view of the truth where everyone can go to see what's going on? And here, I need to know who I'm dealing with. So I need to know your customer and anti-money laundering folks on to the network. And I need privacy of transactions. Unlike Bitcoin, where anybody can join and everybody sees the whole ledger, here we are inviting folks to join, and you only see those transactions which you have permission to see. This trade-off means that enterprise blockchains are no longer censorship resistant. They are not as decentralized as a public blockchain. However, what we're seeing is these two worlds coming together. And I am working with one network it's a metals marketplace, actually, which is highly innovative, which is starting to build a hybrid of public and private. So you're starting to get the benefits in certain channels of that private permissioned world, and you're also getting some of the benefits of the decentralization and the censorship resistance. So this is an interesting pattern that I think will be important as we move forward. Now, the big thing that we've changed with blockchain is decentralization. So we have decentralized control of the marketplace, which effectively means that the governance of the data has been decentralized. So think of blockchain as a governance technology. Also think of it as largely a back-end technology. So the change, the big change that the blockchain is making is at the back end, where we store the provenance of who did what and when. This is a universal state layer for the internet of who did what and when. At the front end, in a user application, the user experience isn't changed so much, other than you may have a front-end application like a wallet, where you may hold your keys to access the blockchain and to access your digital assets. But it's in the middle, in the smart contracts, where we start to deploy our governance model and our governance rules. This is where we start by having the rules for how these trades can be made, how this trade can be made peer to peer, and how ownership can be transferred, and gives us the ability to automate that business model in the code. So this is the first step in how we achieve this governance. The second step is we're going to need to design a membership model. So if you think of all of those members joining the network, be it the smelter, be it the miner, be it the bank, they're going to have a business role on the network. Are they, for example, going to be a governing member, where they will be building out the rules of the marketplace, and where they may well be funding the initial build of the marketplace for innovators to innovate on top of. Or maybe they're a tier one member with very important data, a lot of gravitational pull in the market, where maybe they will participate in governance and the decisions of how the marketplace will be run. Or perhaps they're a lower tier member who perhaps is just informed of governance decisions. But the critical thing to remember here is, how much decentralization do I need? And these roles have to be fair and transparent, so that everybody wants to play on the market, be a small player or a big player, as we become less centralized and more decentralized. So you need to think very carefully about who performs those roles. We'll also need equivalent IT roles. For example, the custodian, who is going to host the nodes where you can create blocks and where you can update the ledger. Who is going to hold nodes where the ledger can be kept and where transactions can be validated and authorized, or who is merely going to access somebody else's node so that they can sign a transaction. So again, the decentralization ambitions that you have here and the type of consensus mechanism you have for how the community is going to come into agreement about these transactions depends on how decentralized you need to be. Recognizing you can start quite centralized and then become more decentralized over time as you morph towards this hybrid of a public and a private environment. So in summary then, my last slide is, what are the three options that you have as to how you could start thinking about deploying blockchain within your business? Well, the first option is you could join a network, an existing network. And that's going to be interesting because you can get that ecosystem reconciliation benefit as you automate that paperwork, as you optimize the world as it is, and you get that provenance. Or you could take a leading role and you could build a network as you pivot to becoming a platform business, perhaps in that governing role, as you seek to create maybe a new business which is going to be running this platform. Or I think the most interesting role of all is the last one, the expand a network. So this is where you join an existing network, but you're going to be innovating on top. You're going to be looking at this wonderful asset of trusted data at the level of the market, and you're going to be saying, what can I do with that to create new value? Could I combine it with some private data? Could I combine it with AI, IoT maybe? What can I do to create a new digital product or service that I can sell on this marketplace? And this is where I think we have the new form of competition. So you collaborate to create the ecosystem reconciliation, and then you compete above it in an innovation layer. So Tanya, that's my basic 10 or 11 minutes. I hope I've not run too far.
But this is perfect, Andy. Thank you very much. I think this is a great setup for the beginning of the conference. I really hope that most people will be already on and will be able to hear it, because I think you outlined really all the main areas, but some very interesting when you say you don't want too many of these networks. And you said maybe by the area, but I was always thinking like by commodity, because there's so much difference, right? Like one thing is iron ore mining, and a completely different is tungsten mining. And so to me, these are the kind of the silos, but there is, of course, the intersection, because one mine can have both commodities, or one processing facility is processing both. And yeah, eventually, it should all integrate, but that's in the future. Also very interesting your comment from starting from private and moving to public, because I just talked to Michelle Ash of Geovia, and she has a lot of experience with blockchain and mining, 5 years, more than anybody probably in the industry. And she said also, she also hopes that eventually it will become public in order to, integrate everything. But realistically, with the mining industry where it is now, it will start private. And we also need to develop even like the basics, you say about, putting paper in first, we need to start there. And it's starting to happen. So I think there is just so much work to do, and it's really exciting to think about, mining ecosystem. I struggle with the word ecosystem. I don't know if I like it, because it kind of seems everywhere now, very popular word. I would just say, mining world, not just industry, but everything that is involved, because it's not just, profit making and the operations, because of course, huge impact on the community, and strong connections with the financial world. So the whole mining universe. And so there are many areas where blockchain fits. And I was thinking Another kind of subdivision that can happen in mining is, there is a blockchain for license management, a blockchain for smart contracts for mine construction, and there's a blockchain for mining logistics, and there's a blockchain for mining finance. These kind of, areas. But then I also know, like, some of our presenters will be talking, they're creating one blockchain system that from tracing and all the way to selling, and then including finance and even insurance, like they're trying to put on all together within a chain of all the companies that are involved in one, mining project. So there are many. So that's really exciting. So yeah, thank you very much. I will